Good afternoon. My name is Robert Slovak, and I'm here with the very learned Tyler Debunking from the Molecular Hydrogen Institute. I guess I could say .com, correct?
Yep, that's our organization.
And he is a certainly the English-speaking authority on molecular hydrogen in the world, and is involved in almost every aspect of this physiological science and product. And I'd like to ask him, and I'll chime in on my history, but I'd like to at least have him tell you, the audience, how he got involved. This might as well a 5-cent tour of your experience. Why?
Yeah, well, so I learned about hydrogen in 2009. There's an article published in Nature Medicine that showed that hydrogen had therapeutic effects, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting. And I started looking at all the literature that there was around hydrogen. There was not so many. I probably found maybe 70 or so articles at the time, and I was very fascinated with it. So I read all those articles and ended up later going to Japan and did an internship at Nagoya University, where I could research myself some of the molecular mechanisms of hydrogen gas and to figure out how it was working or what's really going on.
And you did this through like their biochemistry department?
Department of neurogenetics, and they were kind of the Nagoya University is the 5th most prestigious university in Japan. So they're really top-notch researchers, really good facilities. Just a great opportunity. So pleased to have the ability to go there, and as able to do research. And so then when I could see with my own eyes, like I can add a molecular hydrogen into the cell culture, and then we can see these changes. Do Western blot or do the analysis, and we can see actual changes at the biological level. Then I was like, okay, something's going on. We can actually see things. And as I continued, because that first got me excited about molecular hydrogen, that yes, this is really important. That was in 2013, and when I came back to the States, I started the Molecular Hydrogen Institute, which really at the time, it was just a website just to educate people, about, hey, I've learned about this great science, this great research that I've been fortunate to be involved in, and I wanted to educate people about this area. And specifically, the community, of course, we'll probably go into this with the alkaline ionized water community.
That's right. You kind of dabbled into that to see where that was all about.
That's actually how I originally got introduced into the whole hydrogen idea. Because people were making all these claims about the alkaline ionized water and all these benefits and these studies and da-da-da. And I'm like, that just doesn't really make a lot of sense. Something is missing.
And it was
here.
clear that electrolysis generates hydrogen.
Yes.
But it's like they were late to recognizing that. It's interesting.
Right, because there's a couple stories probably about the history of alkaline ionized water that we can go into. For me, I first learned about alkaline ionized water, heard all these contradicting reasons and the scientific rationale why it would work. It's because it's gonna alkalize your body. And
that was the Song Wong realm.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. And I was like, this doesn't make sense from a physiological perspective. I mean, I know you've been debunking how many years now, alkaline?
Right, and as much as I think appreciated the good intentions of, I think, Song Wong, who was a Korean electrical engineer, if I'm not mistaken, I ended up writing the word wrong on every page of his book. After someone proudly presented it to me as like a revelation in water science. Right. And so I handed it back with the wrong on every page, and I goes, yes, he's confused about alkaline versus alkalinity. I mean, it's something that basic.
Right, which is a huge thing. I mean, for me, I mean, it's an honor really to even be, to know you having done so much in the water industry with, been developed and commercialized reverse osmosis. I mean, you're so well recognized in the water industry. And it's amazing. You were debunking this alkaline water concept long before I may have even been born.
Correct.
And now, but that was part of an interesting theme, because see, in Japan and here in America, people were seeing benefits from alkaline ionized water. But clearly, as you pointed out many times, and as we will, it could be from the alkaline property. You know, I did some, I think I shared with you, I did some stoichiometry, some math, and comparing baking soda, the alkalinity of baking soda to the alkalinity of alkaline water, right?
Right.
And at a pH of 10, baking soda, about 1 teaspoon of baking soda.
In what? In a liter, say? I think it's like pH 8.4.
Yeah, the
Something
pKa baking soda 8.1 or so. So 1 teaspoon of baking soda, though, can neutralize as much acid as over 700 liters of alkaline water at a pH of 10, right?
Absolutely.
So it doesn't make any sense that how can this alkaline ionized water
do all that?
How can it have any of the effects? So it's not the alkaline effect. And then there was these talks about, you know, oh, well, this enigmatic structuring, microclustering of the water.
Right.
But of course, there's no evidence to show that, right? And they have like these, the best one, they have the tea bags, right? Oh, you put tea in there, you put the tea bag in there, and it makes tea, microclustered. But now, of course, we know, well, no, it's because tea acts as a natural pH indicator. It's like taking pH...
the solubility of the tea, tea tannins and so on has a relationship with pH.
Right. It's kind of like taking pH drops from the pool, putting it in the water, and then it turns purple or whatever. Look, the water's microclustered. Like, wait, no?
Exactly.
And so scientifically, it's interesting. People almost couldn't really refute the benefits from the alkaline ionized water because they're almost becoming empirical. So it almost seemed to be above placebo, but still, okay, what is really going on? And that's kind of what got me really interested. Okay, what is it? And that's really when I started looking at the literature of electrolyzed reduced water. That's what they term it in the literature. I started saying, well, they do an electrolysis, hydrogen gas. There's some talks about hydrogen. Then one paper referenced the Nature Medicine publication, and I was like, oh wow, so hydrogen gas is therapeutic. And so in 2013, when I started Molecular Hydrogen Institute, my primary audience really was the group of alkaline ionized water, of these people who were touting negative ORP and microclustering and alkaline pH and all this stuff for the benefits of the water. And I'm like, guys, we've done research. Research has been done. And in fact, when you take water, alkaline ionized water, and remove the hydrogen gas from the water, all the benefits are eliminated. And when you add hydrogen gas to the water, just bubbling it in or something, you get all the benefits. In fact, just earlier this year, we published a study that I was involved with. We actually started this study back in 2013, and this is interesting. So, with this one, the researchers they did almost all the study. They contacted me because they found my institute, and they're like, hey, you're really into water and hydrogen, and we're really interested in getting in this area. We're involved in doing this experiment. Would you help us out? And I was like, absolutely, So they started explaining to me what they were doing. So they bought an alkaline water ionizer from Korea, or maybe it was from Japan. Anyway, they got that. They started doing the testing. Had an alkaline pH, negative ORP, and I asked them, well, what's the hydrogen concentration? Oh, we don't know. And I was like, well, that's a problem because really, I think it's hydrogen that really matters. This is in 2013, but at the time, it wasn't easy to measure molecular hydrogen. We have the methylene blue and the platinum. Sure. That wasn't available at that time.
No.
Okay, so it wasn't easy for them to measure. And I was like, okay, well, let's see what results we have. They had a very negative ORP. So they finished the study. They're almost done with it anyways. Finished the study, showed the results, and guess what? No benefit. The alkaline ionized water had no benefit compared to just normal, regular tap water. And we're like, okay, we really need to see what the concentration of hydrogen is. And the model they were using was diet-induced fatty liver disease. So they fed them a really bad diet and caused a fatty liver. And there was no benefits, and the histochemistry looked the same, at Western blot looked the same, so everything just looked the same. There's no benefit. So then we're like, okay, when they finished it, it's about the same time I was able to get some of that reagent. They send it over to them. They measure the concentration.
This is the H2 blue reagent?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Measure the concentration. The concentration in their water they were using was 0.2 milligrams per liter, or 0.2 ppm, but 0.2 milligrams per liter. That was the concentration, and that had no effect. So like, okay, let's repeat the study, and let's do a similar low concentration, and let's do a higher concentration of hydrogen.
Which they infused with
Well, I think
bubbling gas in.
Well, in this case, what they did is they used a specific, like a magnesium rod.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, and then
sure.
added some acid, get the concentration, and
Got
they were
it.
able to. We did a whole bunch of work, and we were able to figure out how to stabilize it, so we could get. We got a low concentration of 0.3 milligrams per liter, and
Okay.
then 0.8 milligrams per liter.
Okay.
So not even that very high,
Right.
but higher. And then we did the same study. Finished the study, and guess what? As you'd expect, the low concentration is 0.3 milligram per liter.
Nothing.
Nothing. No effect compared to the control. 0.8 milligram, I mean, just remarkably effective. It was very obvious in every case. It even had a residual protective effect when we took, we did a different type of study to show that it had a future protective effect even once the hydrogen gas is completely gone. So this again is just another study showing that when you remove the hydrogen gas from the water, the ORP goes back positive, because the ORP we can talk about it later, but
It's a complex.
it is. We'll get to that in just a little bit. But
Yeah.
just to be clear, we demonstrated once again that when you remove hydrogen gas from alkaline ionized water,
No
all the-
effect.
all the
No
benefits are
health
gone.
benefits.
And this was the same thing that happened before. I mean, Dr. Noda from Kyushu University, and she was she's an excellent pharmacologist researcher. She got into this hydrogen almost similarly. People were coming to her drinking alkaline ionized water who had like Parkinson's disease and other things,
Okay.
and they were like, "Hey, I'm getting better. I'm drinking this water, and I think it's because I'm drinking this water I'm getting better. Is that possible? Like, what's going on?" She's like, I don't see how that's possible. Like, it doesn't make sense that alkaline water would give that." But she tested it in her lab. She tested it, and there was a beneficial effect in the animal model she used. And she was like, "Okay, something's going on."
Because you believe, or she believes that had enough hydrogen in it.
She
to
didn't know.
create-
She didn't know at the
She
time.
just didn't know.
This was way back 2008, early 2009.
Wow.
And she was like, "I don't know, but I'll try it." So she did the study, she tried it, and there was an effect. There was a benefit. And she's like, "We got to get to the bottom of this. That's really interesting. Why would this have an effect? It can't be the alkaline pH. That doesn't make any sense." So she started looking in the literature, and she basically tested every property she could of the water. The alkaline pH, whether the mineral composition in the water, the filtration, the hydrogen gas, and tested every one of them. And as clear can be, only hydrogen mattered. And she could replicate the exact same
Even
results.
that early, there was the insight. I had no idea.
Yeah, and she published her paper in 2009, I believe, 2010. Wow. And there was hydrogen gas was responsible. And then another independent group out of Korea, Dr. Kyuju Lee. Actually, he's the president of the Korean Water Society, and he's actually one of the original pioneers of alkaline ionized water. One of the first persons and researchers and scientists to do any research on alkaline ionized water. He showed it had an anti-cancer effect, an anti-diabetic effect. When you look at the original studies, it's his name that appears.
What do you think drove all these companies? Like early on, like Panasonic had a batch ionizer.
Yeah,
right?
that's actually the one that Dr. Noda
Huh?
used.
What?
That's actually the one that Dr. Noda used, one from Panasonic.
Okay. I mean, what
Okay.
did they use to confirm that they were making a meaningful appliance?
Oh, I know, right? So, I'll come back to that story. Just so you can see, Dr. Lee, he found the exact same thing. When he was doing his research, he removed the hydrogen gas from the water, all the benefits were eliminated. When you put hydrogen gas back in the water, all the benefits were reinstated. So it really is becoming very clear that hydrogen gas is a benefit. And that, of course, is why when I started Molecular Hydrogen Institute, my primary audience at the time really was just to educate those who that I become familiar with on, hey, there's a lot of misinformation about water in general. Let's clear up some misinformation, and maybe I can educate on what the research is actually showing, and what some of my research is actually showing now that I was actually doing research on it. And going to your question, well, how do these major companies like Panasonic and other ones even get involved? Well, it's not too difficult when you understand some of the history. First off, the Japanese government's very strict. So anything that's going to be used and then be used into humans has to be approved by the government.
Right.
Kind of like the FDA has to approve dental floss, right? That's a medical device because it's going to the body. So when they first used this water, they used it on agriculture, and they think, yeah, maybe this has some benefits. This is like the 1930s. And then they started applying to humans. Hey, people drink it. People were thinking that maybe they'll have some benefits. Now they wanted to produce machines so people could drink them, and they did. And so they had to get the government approval. The government just said, okay, let's make sure it's safe, make sure it's not going to be toxic for people to drink. Do the basic safety, pay the money, and so on. And then they were approved by the Japanese Ministry of Health and Welfare in 1964 or so. And then companies started making them and selling them as water purification systems and healthy, functional water. But then it just continued to grow. More people would buy it, and they'd get some benefits, and they'd talk about it, and it was just like this boom that just kept on going more, and the market was in demand. And the customer is always right. So companies like Panasonic, if everybody's saying, I want good water filtration, I want functional water, I want this, then they're like, yeah, okay.
And this even expanded into a considerable commercial level of ionizers, right?
Yeah.
People were making bottled water plants with ionizers.
They were. In the 1980s, it was huge in Japan. And there were some, the government actually had to come down on listen, this is not a medical,
panacea.
This is just, but people were getting these benefits, and that's what got, people like Dr. Noda and Dr. Lee to originally let's look at this, because there are a lot of people saying they're getting benefits. Let's look at this. And then when they did the research, they're like, wow, it's the molecular hydrogen that's responsible for this. So now, of course, in Japan, and in Asia, alkaline ionized waters are really not very common anymore. I mean, I go there all the time, and it's not like it used to be. If hydrogen's everywhere, in fact, the most recent survey, at least it was in Tokyo, but 50% of the population uses hydrogen. 50%. I mean, that's huge.
Exactly.
So, alkaline ionized water is kind of, now we understand how it works. Now that we understand what is the therapeutic effect, now manufacturers or companies are going to say, okay, now that we know how it works, we know what to focus on. And now we can focus on increasing dissolved hydrogen.
Isn't it interesting, while that was playing out, the supposed alkaline effect, in my world, the ORP, the negative ORP, was playing out, okay? And both were missing the real mark, which was hydrogen.
And when did you get into ORP?
2008 and a half.
So just before me. And so I got into in 2009 in Southern California.
I can't believe
And you were in Southern California.
Totally.
And so we could have crossed paths.
We should have crossed
that would have
paths,
been,
because you could have straightened me out.
Well, no, I didn't know at the time. I mean, I was like...
Well, maybe I could have straightened you out, confirmed that...
You would have helped me.
That alkaline pH is meaningless, and you could have said, hey, the negative ORP isn't the thing, but it's maybe have some connection in there.
So go, explain, go
So,
more.
frankly, Patrick Flanagan, with his microhydrogen product, was selling the hydride ion, okay? Yeah. And he had filed some patents and did some clinical studies, et cetera, and he was basically selling a super antioxidant that donated, we're talking H-, that just wanted to give that extra electron away.
Just don't believe any of this, because it's all false, but go ahead.
And it became a movement, okay? And so I just ran into people, and they said, listen, we can do this perhaps another way. And it involves the making of hydrogen, but the real play is the fact that it's a negative ORP. Okay?
Oh my goodness.
And so we started to basically use what is used today largely to generate hydrogen, and that's magnesium and other salts, et cetera. And we came out in December 2010 with the first hydrogen tablet, which we called active H minus.
Active H minus.
Minus.
Oh my goodness.
Active H minus. Okay.
Yeah.
So we
Two things that are just absurdly false, but
two
go on.
things that are absurdly, and I think they have about a picosecond life, possibly, don't they? So we had a problem of making it be able to react in water. Okay, and so a bunch of people just came together and it was thought out with the help of others, and this was a collaboration, and we finally came out with a tablet that reacted. And unbeknownst to us, we never even thought about measuring hydrogen. We just achieved the negative ORP of minus 500 and more, okay? And we were home free. And frankly, what was interesting is that our experience with doctors from selling ketone and so on, we distributed it through them, and it was a sellout. Every time we made 5,000 bottles, it was a sellout.
Interesting.
And so, and we never knew, yes, they were getting benefits because this thing was making hydrogen.
Right.
Okay? And that was the bottom line. So we both just almost collided, but just missed each other in the air.
Well, that ORP thing is really what got me really interested, because I wanted to understand that. Negative oxidation reduction potential. We don't use that as a measurement in science. Like, we don't have, ORP, like our ORP meters, we don't really use that. And so I had a difficult time finding anybody to talk to at the universities, because this is when I was,
much less its health effect,
yeah,
right?
Much less its health effects, right? So it was a difficult time trying to understand. And so finally, when I was doing some of my more serious chemistry courses and really understanding this and being able to talk with the professors and do research on it on my own, I was like, okay, now I get it. It all makes sense. It all goes back down to the well-known Nernst equation, right? And it's probably really, we can make it complicated, but let's keep it really simple, just so the audience can understand. But the Nernst equation, it simply takes it's a ratio of the oxidation and the oxidized species and the reduced species. So you have a ratio, and so it's not necessarily a concentration even. Right. It's just a ratio, and then it takes it's a negative logarithm of that ratio. So it's basically the inverse exponent, which is a log, right? And it's the negative of that.
Correct.
And so if you when you can there's another, because H plus is the oxidized species, and that's pH. Well, that's one exponent right there. So there's and then when, in the Nernst equation, you actually have to square. So you square two. So you have two exponents, three exponents. Anyway, the reason you have so many exponents
and a pH factor.
Yeah, in all this, which makes it so that measuring the ORP in no way, shape, or form can give you an estimate concentration of the hydrogen gas.
Even though a wonderful, tempting Japanese meter came out that tried to do just that.
Yeah.
Do you remember the handle?
Right.
Beautifully made, as Japanese make beautiful stuff.
Yeah. Well, and in their instructions, it even says, you can't use this in water that's not neutral pH. It's not pH 7.
Exactly.
And that's because that H plus, which is lower in high pH water, and therefore changes the ratio a lot, is going to have those effects. But ORP is really, as we talked about ad nauseum, is useless. The only conceivable benefit is if it has hydrogen gas in it, then it will have a negative ORP. But
correct.
But if it does not have a negative ORP, then you can rest assured there's no hydrogen gas in it. So you don't even need to worry about drinking it or measuring the concentration.
And our common friend Randy wrote an interesting paper on exactly this relationship and so on.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think it's just on his website.
Right.
It's a great. Yeah, I've reviewed it. It goes through the basic math and actual experimentations. And then I also took and measured the concentration of hydrogen, actual concentrations, and then compared that to changes in pH and ORP.
Right.
And yeah, we can see it just doesn't work. It all comes down to the hydrogen gas. So this is what this is the bottom line when it comes to ORP. If something has a negative ORP, they need to ask two questions. Number one, what is responsible for the negative ORP?
Correct.
Because it could be bad for you. I can make a negative ORP with toxic, harmful,
Absolutely.
beta-mercaptoethanol. That's could be a very negative ORP. Maybe not
Correct.
the best thing to be ingesting, right?
Right.
So what is responsible for the negative ORP? And the second question is, what is the concentration? Because maybe the negative ORP is being made from vitamin C. Well, that's good for you. But the concentration is, 0.5 milligram.
Correct.
Well, then although 0.5 milligram actually won't give you a negative ORP, but just as an example, it's not enough though to give you really a beneficial effect. Same thing with hydrogen. If you can't even measure the hydrogen gas in the water with like the redox reagent,
right,
then there's just no benefit. So first, what is responsible for the negative ORP? What is the chemical species in there? And then second, what is the concentration? But it's better to just don't worry about any of that and just directly measure the concentration of hydrogen.
Correct. And things that we've run into, especially our famous foot bath experience, okay?
Yeah.
Once again, we found yet another device that has wonderful benefits for 20 years, the famous ionic foot bath. And we could never understand when I invited you to my booth at the autism conference. I don't know if you recall, we were across the room from the ionic.
Yes, I remember now. Yeah, I think I actually spoke on part of that with you.
Yeah,
then I had to
right.
go to Japan. It was on my layover or something. Came, and then went to Japan.
And we wondered why these women were enjoying the benefits of this foot bath, and you just said, you just looked like almost nonchalantly, it's hydrogen. And I go, no way. No, I know it's not hydrogen, okay? Because it's an open foot bath and so on. And you just walked right over to a booth, grabbed a bottle of titrant for hydrogen, and you confirmed it had 0.5 ppm of hydrogen in it.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And so here's another kind of expression of the benefits of hydrogen. And no one ever even talked about it.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because that one just came because I was at a conference earlier in China and I was talking with a company and they actually were into ionic foot bath cleanses and stuff. And like for me, I would just say the whole thing is total nonsense. Just as you always have.
But I don't anymore.
But we had these conversations, and so but the things that they say, you must have had these toxins because the water turned this color, right? Well, that's just
that
normal
part
electrochemistry, right? But I was talking to this company, this is in China, and they're like, yeah, and then we found out about the hydrogen. And we we do electrolysis. Do we make hydrogen? They make hydrogen. So maybe that's what it is. And they changed the entire business. They stopped manufacturing the ionic foot cleansing
bath with the metal oxides.
Yeah, they just went full blown into molecular hydrogen and started doing that. Changed the whole manufacturing because now we have good science. We're gonna have a good product, and that's what we're gonna do.
Right.
And so that was during the same time that that's why I was like, if there's a benefit, it's probably the hydrogen because you're applying the hydrogen directly to the skin. Hydrogen is the smallest molecule in the universe. It's neutral. It's slightly hydrophobic. So that hydrogen gas is going to go right through your skin. It's going to go through the skin,
Correct.
penetrate into the blood, and have some potential benefits.
I had a direct experience. Perhaps I'm going to guess now. 2 years ago, I was running I was running in a very rough terrain, as hard as I could go, with someone who was much more accomplished runner at your level, okay? Maybe not as much, but at your level. And my ego got the best of me and I was pushing myself beyond my limits. And I took, I would say, a cartoon-like fall down a very rough terrain. Uh-huh. And I ended up fracturing both of my ankles and 3 ribs, okay? This is about 2 years ago. Uh-huh. And, it was devastating for a 73-year-old to do this, as the doctor reminded me. You're not supposed to be doing this at 73. So I go, yes, I understand that, doctor. So I left his place with my x-rays of all these fractures and in great pain and a couple of crutches, okay? Oh. So I went home and I immediately got a tray of water, much like the ionic foot bath trays, and I put probably 50 tablets of magnesium tablets, or
Interesting idea.
active H. By this
Your
time,
product,
we
yeah.
knew hydrogen was the real thing. Put 50 tablets in there and had a bottle here, and I'd throw them in once in a while to keep it going. And I did this 3 times a day. And I can say that within 5 days, I was walking without crutches.
Wow.
And in 13 days, I was jogging again.
Okay.
Okay? Not aggressively,
Okay.
but I was just jogging, and I couldn't believe how this healed. And when I went back to the doctor, x-rays and so on, and he goes, "Where's your crutches?" Okay? I said, I don't need them.
Wow.
And he walks in, and they do the x-rays, and he goes, "It was like one of these." What the heck?
Especially your age. I mean,
Yeah,
you just would heal that
That
fast.
quickly, right?
Yeah,
So
that's-
it was definitely living proof for me that hydrogen has this magnificent therapeutic
Yeah,
effect.
and I hear these things all the time, and as looking at scientifically, I'm like, I don't know. I tend to want to just put so much emphasis on the placebo effect because it's so difficult to explain. But we do see there is one clinical study with the soft tissue injuries, for example, in sports that
Right.
they increase the return to recovery and increase the range of motion faster, and they're able to have that benefit. And this soaking, especially the way that you described, that would be a very high concentration of hydrogen that could really get
Tremendous.
into those joints better than maybe any other way.
I mean, I really look forward to, now that we're going to have available kind of a larger product, a larger mass tablet, if you will, to try in baths.
You mean you're going to come out with the tablets that's bigger than what you have now?
Yeah, like 5 times bigger.
Wow. Interesting.
And that can be used economically in a bath and infuse the water in a bath. I think we're going to learn something from this.
Yeah, well, that's, I think bathing could be a great way to
Right.
get the hydrogen.
Don't you remember some years ago, you were exposed to a hydrogen shower?
Yes, yeah, I do. I do remember that. In fact, that's another one of the misunderstandings, because when they told me all these benefits, and people are flying in from all over the world to take a shower in this magical shower infused with
In
these-
Florida, I think.
Yeah, yep, it was in Florida, and I'm like, what? And then the they had 8 Nobel Prize winners that were supposedly working in this area or advising or consulting, because they had so many amazing results, and very high-end people would fly in and take these showers. And so I was like, what is going on? And I find out who.
What year do you think that was?
That would have been 2016, I think. 2015, 2016.
15 maybe, yeah.
Yeah, so 4 years ago or more. And so, yeah, but then when I connected, somehow I was connected with the actual group. Someone introduced somebody or whatever, and I started talking to them and asked them, so tell me about your device. And of course they didn't want to say anything at all because it's very proprietary, very top secret. As I started digging into it more, I realized that what they were doing, they were making hydrogen gas. And I started talking to them. They liked what I was, they wanted to understand it better for themselves. They felt comfortable, and they
Did they generate hydrogen intentionally, or they didn't know what they were
know.
doing?
They had no idea. They had no idea about hydrogen. So I was actually at a conference, at a traumatic brain injury conference,
Okay.
in Florida, and I was only an hour or 45 minutes away from where this company happened to be. So it was interesting, the timing, how it all happened. So I went to the conference, and then I was like, well, I'll just go over there myself, and I'll go take a shower, and I'll check it out. And I did, and I measured the hydrogen, and yes, there was hydrogen. I don't remember the concentration, but it was there. And I explained the research and this and that, and they're like, oh my goodness. And so now they're trying to focus on, okay, how do we improve this?
Right.
And I know that you've also been trying to do this. And then I was in Japan at the symposium, And they talked about another benefit of doing hydrogen showers. So now it's a growing, emerging thing.
I think we'll see this
Yeah.
in 2019.
It seems to be just an easy, great way, another method to get the hydrogen.
I'm going to change the subject a little bit, but since there is an incredibly accelerated movement in the anti-aging, even age reversal paradigm, okay? I mean, we're seeing conferences, age reversal. We're seeing books come out on age reversal using, just tons of new methods, biochemistry, stem cells, platelet-rich plasma. I mean, it's like an avalanche of things.
Yeah, like Radfest conference.
Like the Radfest conference.
Yeah.
Where do you see a role for hydrogen in any of these, maybe in an ancillary way, like insulin resistance?
Well, okay,
or
where do we not see hydrogen? It's just interesting, Tell me one of the top things that is in the anti-aging from your perspective.
Insulin resistant mitochondrial.
Okay, no, let's do one at a time,
okay.
and I'll see if hydrogen. We'll just play a game.
Insulin resistance.
No, so of course more research needs to be done. But we see in animal studies and human studies, but the animal studies we see that hydrogen can improve insulin resistance and diabetic mice. It can increase beta cell activity too, so we get more insulin. It can actually help with the GLUT4 translocation, which helps to get the glucose in. Right. That's of course what insulin is.
Right.
One of the things that insulin does. So in this case, it's able to help with the insulin resistance, and then we see human studies like metabolic syndrome and areas that hydrogen helps to lower the glucose. In fact, in one of the studies, let's see, there was but the majority of those with glucose intolerance were completely normalized after the randomized study from just drinking hydrogen-rich water. Okay, so insulin resistance, it fits in because that's what helps with it. One of the things it helps with is improving insulin sensitivity. All right, what's your next one?
The mother of all aging, inflammation.
Yeah, so chronic inflammation. That's perfect. Well, so chronic inflammation is terrible. It's a dysregulation of inflammation, because as you get older,
correct,
you tend to have this low-grade chronic inflammation, and then an inability to have good inflammation when you get sick or when you get injured, right?
Correct.
And so
it's like reversed.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of reversed. Well, yes, hydrogen helps with all. It also can modulate many different transcription factors and pro-inflammatory modulators. NF-kappa B, for example, that gets activated by TNF alpha, and that can induce increase the production of a whole bunch of pro-inflammatory cytokines like interleukin 6. I guess going a little deep, but all these are highly cause a lot of inflammation, and hydrogen gas can attenuate all of these, and it's not just going to blunt it out completely, but it helps to almost regulate them. Like your NSAIDs or other things, they just take it out. They're gonna block the COX enzyme, for example. They're just gonna stop it. Well, hydrogen seems to more regulate it. If you need inflammation, which we do, you need inflammation to heal things. Hydrogen's not going to just no more inflammation for you, right? But if you're too high, if your interleukin 6 levels or C-reactive protein levels or homocysteine levels, whatever, are too high, then it appears, based upon the clinical and preclinical studies, that yes, hydrogen gas lowers that back to homeostasis. So it helps with
hydrogen's just a lot smarter than NSAIDs, right?
Yeah, I mean it's smaller.
And it's smaller and more available.
Yeah, it's interesting that hydrogen can do that. Okay, so we talked about insulin resistance and inflammation.
Right. Well, I'm curious about the thing that's gotten the curiosity of so many areas of medicine right now, and that's the mitochondria, because I think in the last 5 or 10 years we through technology have been able to examine it like we've never examined it before.
Yeah.
I mean, I think 20 years ago, electron transport chain, we didn't even have we just knew something was going on. But now we can almost do a movie of it, right?
Well, yeah, there are pretty neat animations,
Exactly.
and I still think we're probably a long way from.
Oh, I'm sure.
understanding right how it really works, but yeah, the mitochondria, they seem to be not only the powerhouse of the cell, but in a lot of ways the brain of the cell.
Right.
I mean, they really regulate.
But I don't
so
know
many
how
things.
hydrogen. We have read that some research, and this is I never really understood this. Some research says that the presence of sufficient hydrogen in vivo can actually induce the production of ATP outside of the transport chain. I mean, have you read that? I'm
Yeah,
not
that-
sure
that was
even
actually
what,
by
that,
one of
what
our-
that means.
That was by one of our MHI advisors, Professor Banks, from the University of Washington, and his.
Is that just a curiosity, you think, or like, what do
No.
you do with that? What do you mean? What does it mean to make it outside of the electron transport?
Well, it's a different type of pathway, the Jagendorf pathway. or
Okay.
something. And you know, but it's just saying. So typically, the purpose of the electron transport chain is to build up a proton gradient. That's hydrogen ions. Of course, we're talking about hydrogen gas.
Hydrogen gas, right.
Let's not get
Molecular
confused.
hydrogen is hydrogen gas, and hydrogen ions have a net
Proton.
charge, right?
Yeah. So the electron transport chain builds a proton gradient, and then the proton gradient that's high enough that's able to it forces itself through the ATP synthase enzyme, and you make ATP.
And ATP.
So they did it's an interesting study. You can take a look at it. It's published in PLOS One, I believe, 2015, with traumatic brain injury.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they found that the hydrogen increased the ATP production, and was able to do so after using various electron transport chain inhibitors, like antimyosin, for example, inhibit the electron transport chain, and we can still see an increase in the ATP production. And so, how did it do that? Well, they went through some different methods and suggested, okay, maybe
Very
it's doing
interesting.
it this way, even independent of the electron transport chain, which is, yeah, it's very fascinating.
Now, do you have anything else to say, comment on
the mitochondria?
hydrogen and the mitochondria connection?
Absolutely. I think that as we understand hydrogen better, we're going to actually see that a lot of it boils down to the mitochondria in reality.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a big statement. I'm not sure where it's going, but this just shocked me. Okay, go.
Yeah. Well, and I know some things that we haven't published yet, and it's exciting.
Oh, come on.
So-
give them a little taste of something. And me too, because I don't know this.
I may have said too much already.
This is above my pay grade, everyone.
Well, but let's just consider history a little bit, right? Hydrogenases, so hydrogenase enzyme, right, is an enzyme that can actually produce or utilize
hydrogen
as an energy
as a
source.
metabolic energy source.
Is that as a substrate. And the mitochondria, well, they have there's a lot of similarities, a lot of similar pathways between hydrogenases, the hydrogysomes, and the mitochondria. There's a whole.
Interesting.
You can read the hydrogen hypothesis, for example.
So we probably had early prokaryotic organisms probably had hydrogenase.
They
as
do,
their-
yeah. It's in the whole endosymbiotic theory. It fits this narrative very well. It's very compelling.
Now, I mean, am I correct in thinking I read that some animal species, or perhaps even some human beings, hydrogenase is indicated, is present in the organism still?
Not that we know of. Not has been published.
Okay.
Now,
Any animal?
not in animals. Now,
Okay.
humans do bear the genetic hallmark signatures of hydrogenase enzymes,
Okay.
but not the actual enzyme itself.
Okay.
So we do
Got
have
it.
some sort of remnants, maybe also the remnants of the hydrogen targets are conserved or something, where that's why we have these biological effects. But there are hydrogenase enzymes in higher eukaryotes. In fact, in plants, there are some plants actually produce hydrogen gas. In fact, I was just at Beijing University. Yeah, it's amazing. Like alfalfa or rice, or some of the common things. Some of them, when they're stressed, they start producing hydrogen gas.
Wow.
And that benefits them. They actually do better. And then if we administer more hydrogen gas, the plant is able to be very resilient to stress from salt or cadmium or drought or something else.
So wait, when you administer it in like a growing solution,
Yeah,
say?
yeah,
Huh?
yeah. Yeah, like when you're watering it, you water it with hydrogen water.
Okay. Do you remember, I don't know if you, I think I told you this story, but when I was at a conference and there was the other ionic foot bath that the man, he was right next to our booth, and I went to him and I said, you know, I think these ionic foot baths aren't like the real deal. And he said, wait, we're not the one that makes the colors. Okay?
Okay.
We're not the one that makes the colors. I go, really? I said, I don't think I've ever seen one before. He said, well, I'm inviting you to come over to have a foot bath. Frankly, I on the last day I went over there and I found it a very enjoyable experience. Okay, and he said it's really all about hydrogen. That's what he says.
He said that.
Totally.
When
And
was
he
this?
had it was at the Colorado Springs.
Okay, so this is more recently. So
More recently.
he had gotten the message. Maybe he
Got the message.
Maybe he went
and
to
so
one of my
on.
lectures.
So I'm sitting there and I goes, really, this is very pleasant. I said, I could even see myself owning this. He said, it seems like you're interested in this kind of stuff. He said, do you have any idea what this does to plants?
Really?
This is what he says. And I'm going, oh no, he's not going to tell me about plant growth. And he goes, let me show you this. And he goes over and he gets something, the largest briefcase I've ever seen, leather. I remember it vividly. And he brings it over and puts it right down in front of me. And he goes, what plant are you interested in learning about? I'm going, what? He must have had 40 or 50 files in there. And he goes, all of these are university studies. I couldn't believe the accomplishment. And he goes, you want to see broccoli? You want to see tomatoes? Do you want to see pot? Do you want to see this? Do you want to see that? And he had the studies of plant growth, photographs, everything of every plant, giving them the water that had been treated with his apparatus.
Interesting. I'd like to look at that and maybe.
Oh, you have to.
concentration
I
of
can find his name. I don't know who he is, but he was astute, and he had the proof like I've never seen before.
That's fascinating. Yeah, because we see in the research, and it actually makes me a little bit more of a believer in hydrogen. I know it sounds kind of strange, but to be honest, sometimes I get kind of skeptical about even the research that I'm doing. I'm like, man, like this is so ridiculous.
Like, can it really be?
Can it really be? You know. But then sometimes when we see the results in plants. I mean, it's not like the plant. I don't know. Is there a placebo effect in plants? I mean, maybe,
I don't think so.
Maybe some quantum dimension.
No, it can be. We know it can be, but
I
think it's biochemistry. And when you see like the tomato with 40 tomatoes on it versus the tomato with 13, you know that something is happening.
Well, we don't see that much of this with hydrogen. Well, as far as I know, but
No,
exactly.
this was that dramatic.
Well, maybe. Well,
we're going to connect with them.
Yeah, that would be
seriously.
that'd be interesting to look at. But I'm just saying, we there are going to the hydrogenase. Some of these higher eukaryotes, like they do have them, and they can produce hydrogen gas, and they can actually use it as well. We found some interesting research that we're still working on but it's if it's real what we found, it's very interesting. It could change our entire way we view plants.
Totally correct.
So, but we don't have the hydrogenase enzyme. So with the mitochondria, going to the mitochondria, yes, hydrogen gas also it can increase the PGC1 alpha. That's a marker of mitochondrial biogenesis. So now we're getting more mitochondria. We also protecting the mitochondria because we're helping to prevent radical damage, oxidative stress.
Right.
Exactly. And so we're protecting the mitochondria, we're improving its efficiency, its function, we're making more mitochondria. A lot of things are regulated within the mitochondria and where hydrogen gas benefits.
So can you say, we're going to, I think, probably bring part one to a close, okay? But can you think of one last thing that's maybe anti-aging related that is, I haven't even brought up, that I haven't mentioned, that you think hydrogen may play a role? Perhaps from the research you're involved in.
Well, let's see. Probably the biggest one, and we are involved in some of this, obviously, of course, but is really oxidative stress.
Yeah.
And the whole, every disease essentially can be linked to
Totally.
an onset of oxidative stress. But it's not just oxidative stress, but it's actually a redox dysregulation, because you can have too much oxidative stress in some cells or some compartments of the cell and not enough oxidative potential in others. And so you can have this dysregulation of redox homeostasis. And when you have that, that's the real cause of aging and disease, is this dysregulation, redox dysregulation. And I think that helps us understand why supplementation of exogenous high-dose antioxidants really doesn't help very much, because it can actually exacerbate the redox dysregulation, because you're just providing more of these reductants, and then they can in turn be oxidants.
Create another imbalance.
Exactly. Well, hydrogen doesn't work this way at all. Hydrogen is a gaseous signal modulator, and it modulates. It's like a redox adaptogen, and it's able to regulate our redox homeostasis. Correct. And it get things back to where it needs to be. So your glutathione levels can be back, balanced to where they need to be. Your superoxide dismutase levels, your activation of the NRF2 pathway, because of course that's how it works through that pathway. All of these areas. Hydrogen gas we see in so many studies, cell studies and animal studies, and of course the human studies. We're seeing that hydrogen gas is very effective in this area of improving and maintaining the redox homeostasis, and so therefore combating this oxidative stress that we talk about. So in terms of anti-aging, I think that's a very good one. But then of course, hydrogen just has other just real anti-aging effects in itself. It regulates autophagy, for example, which is a big one, and there's so many other areas with its anti-aging effects that I think, as we understand the molecule of the that's been around forever, right? The most forever anti-aging molecule there is.
The most forever.
Right?
The Big Bang molecule.
Yeah. Here it is, guiding us, if you will, to live live long and prosper, as Spock would say.
Cool. Very cool. So this turned out to be far more engaging and interesting than I even imagined. So we're going to call this part 1 officially. Okay? Is that agreeable?
Yeah,
to
yeah.
you?
We have lots to get.
So I thank you for joining us for this fireside chat, and we will see you next time when we launch part 2 with another exciting chapter in the molecular hydrogen science realm. Thank you.